All right, so just give me a minute here. Let me get this going. Okay, good. We're going to talk about commitment this morning. And David, I want you to chime in whenever you want to.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about the benefits of commitment to building love into your marriage, because I see this cycle very often in marriages as I've worked with hundreds of couples throughout my counseling career. People will start to have difficulty in their relationship, and that will, instead of strengthening their commitment, weaken their commitment. When the commitment weakens, people become insecure in a relationship. That insecurity leads to insecure behaviors. Generally speaking, when people are insecure in a relationship, it brings out their worst self. If they're secure in a relationship, it brings out their best self. So people become their worst selves, and the commitment weakens further because they're fighting and not being helpful to each other, and the environment in the relationship goes downhill. That leads to more difficulty, more weakened commitment, and the cycle escalates very quickly, and people end up divorced. It's very sad. So commitment is kind of the bedrock of this security and trust building process in a relationship, and ultimately intimacy results from that. It's kind of like soil to a garden. I was going to say yesterday, I forgot to mention this, but when I moved to Florida, I was so excited I was going to get 2 growing seasons a year. But it turns out you can't really grow a lot of things in Florida because the soil is not soil, it's sand. And so you really have to buy dirt to grow your vegetables and fruits in and so forth. I was thinking about David's sermon and how what we're doing with Try This at Home is so unique because we're bringing in a truckload of compost, basically, this rich soil. And that's the theological basis for what we're doing with Try This at Home. It's unique. Like, I don't think there's any other marriage materials that go so deep on theology to begin with, but I think that's what makes us extra helpful and powerful. But anyway, so that commitment to one another is like the soil of a garden. If you have good, rich soil, you're going to be able to grow strong and healthy vegetables. I couldn't believe it in Florida that I planted zucchini hills. And zucchini, you grow in the northern country, and you have to lock your car in August, or people will put zucchini in your car and leave it there, So it's like a total opposite in Florida. They'd be fine and they'd die the next day because of the poor soil. So you can see where I'm going with that. Interestingly enough, there's an inverse relationship between amygdala arousal and orgasm. I know this is kind of random, but amygdala is the fear-mediating part of your brain, the part that sort of like gets activated when you're anxious. And if you're anxious, it's more difficult to experience sexual pleasure. So that's something to sort of factor into this whole issue of creating security in your relationship, where you have that secure base with one another, and you can be your real self with that person and not be living in fear of rejection or condemnation or judgment. And that way you can really, really relax into the relationship more fully and experience more pleasure on multiple levels. So this is a mutual friend of ours, Matt Para. He's one of the craziest people I know, but I love him dearly. And he and I got in a conversation. This was like 15, how long have they been married? 20 years yet, maybe? 15 or so years, 15, 18 years ago at a conference. And I had just kind of met him, and he was kind of from my area, and I really liked him. And we were chatting, and he had a girlfriend. And she was a beautiful woman. He liked her, and she liked him. But he said to me in so many words, I don't know if I want to commit to her because she's not committed to me. And what I basically said to him, he's this real straight shooter kind of guy, and so I was real straight with him, and I said, listen to yourself, Matt. You're saying you want her to do something that you aren't willing to do yourself. And if male or female are more qualified to be the one to take the risk, women are more rejection sensitive than men are, generally speaking, so it's often easier for the man to put himself out there. And it also shows manhood and courage and bravery that are going to come in very handy in their marriage. So listen to yourself, Matt. You're not willing to do it. You're asking her to take a step you're not willing to do until she takes it. It's like one of those feedback loops where one person has to make the first move. It's a contractual thing to say, I won't commit until you're committed to me. And then you end up in a total standoff like we were talking about yesterday. So that's what he was saying, and I called him out on it, and this is what happened. It's pretty cool, huh?
And they got married.
Yep. I'm so proud of myself. I take a little bit of credit for all these cute kids that they have. Is he still pastoring in?
Yeah, he's pastoring in Chehalis, Washington. Great story about Matt. Go back one there. Matt came to a series of evangelistic meetings that I held in Apopka, Florida in 1999. He was
That's like 5 minutes from
heroin addict.
Yeah, really?
Mother bribed him to come. He was a drug dealer, drug addict. And his mother was like, you have to come to these meetings. There's this young guy speaking. This was the same year that Violet and I got married, so 25 years ago. And I tell the story that when he came, he was sitting like this.
Yeah.
He was sitting, because he was there. He had like this wife beater shirt on, and he would just sit like this. He looked terrible, emaciated. He would just sit like this, totally disinterested. 2 nights later, he was sitting like this. 3 nights later, he's sitting like this. And then within a week, he's like this, leaning over, looking at his Bible. Like, he just had this incredible transformation from completely disinterested, just there because his mom made him come. He was baptized at the end of that meeting, and literally he's one of these guys, he's a dear friend of mine, that was filled with the Spirit from the day he was baptized. He just went straight to preaching and has never looked back. And he is a Spirit-filled man of God. I mean, you know him, Zach, a beautiful soul. And one of the great things is he's now an incredible husband and an amazing father. And God has blessed he and Charisse with these 4 beautiful kids. He helped us start Arise Australia. So Arise began in 2003. We were in Michigan and then in Oregon or California, then later Oregon. And we moved to Australia. Matt moved to Australia in 2012. We started Arise Australia in 2013, and it's still running to this day. And Matt's the one that basically got the whole thing going. He worked with me for 10 years. So I'm just so proud of him, the husband that he is, the father that he is, the man of God that he is. But I can still see him right now in my mind's eye with this wife beater, these board shorts and flip-flops, sitting in that tent meeting with like 600 other people, just as disinterested as could be. Within a week, he's just like this. Baptized at the end and never looked back, just straight into the kingdom.
And
so
don't you think it
brings me great joy?
It says a lot about his character that I could be so direct with him, and he just like.
I mean, there's not a person in the world.
Some
more direct
people can
than
dish
Matt.
it out, but they can't take it. But I would say he can take it.
And one little great thing is that they had 3 boys. You can see the 3 boys there, Max and Benji. What's the little one's name, babe? Desmond.
Yeah.
And then they really wanted a girl. So they had boy, and then they got their little girl. Shiloh.
Yeah.
So
you guys get the point that commitment does great things. You can grow beautiful things out of commitment. Here are a few of them. So the question is, who commits? I mentioned this a moment ago, that men generally tend to be better risk takers because they're less rejection sensitive. This is just science here. And so to me, they're more suited psychologically overall to be the one that puts themselves out there in a courtship context. But once you're married, it's kind of both to me. And I think, yeah, exactly. I think one partner being fully committed can save a marriage, frankly, in many cases, not all. But it's better if both are. So really, really, really seriously consider the power of that. So one of the questions people ask in regards to commitment is, well, what if we've kind of lost our first love? The feelings are just kind of gone. I want to talk to you about the neuroscience of pair bonding. Several things happen to the brain in the process of forming a romantic connection. One of them is the judgment center of the brain starts to dim. You can't see the flaws in the other person as well as you can once you're out of that fog. So that's kind of a good thing, because everyone has flaws, and none of us would get married if we saw each other for who we really are, I think, in some ways. Mentalization is the ability to feel what the other person feels, and, well, it's more the ability to think what the other person is thinking and see things from their perspective. That's called mentalization. And it dims, it goes down when people are in this pair bonding process and their brains are flush with all of these neurochemicals. This is part of the reason we think that some people develop crushes with celebrities and actually think they have a chance with that celebrity. I had a friend who wanted to, she developed this, she was actually mentally ill, but she developed this plan of producing a movie starring Kevin Costner. And she actually believed that he was going to be in the movie and he was going to go along with her plan. And she thought she had a chance with this totally out of reach celebrity, but she had a crush on him. And so that affected her brain. It's really interesting to look at these things. There's a flood of dopamine in the brain. That's the pleasure neurotransmitter. The sense of anticipation is mediated by dopamine. There's an increase in adrenaline, so you're going to be kind of hyperactivated. There's, interestingly enough, a reduction in serotonin, which is the natural mood regulator of the brain that keeps us on an even keel. Very low serotonin is present in people who have OCD. And so what we think is that possibly part of the reason people become obsessed with the object of their love is because they have this suppressed serotonin and they develop kind of situational OCD symptoms. And then again, there's this amygdala shutdown when they don't experience the normal negative emotions that the amygdala is capable of. So there's something else called the nucleus accumbens, and it turns off the amygdala, leading to suppression of negative information. So if you have that amygdala shutdown, you're not going to see, again, the negatives in that other person that you really kind of need to see if you're going to actually marry the person. And this is why we believe in counsel and talking to other people that aren't in love with the person that you're in love with. But my point is this, that you go through some pretty seismatic, some pretty significant neurological changes. And there's really kind of an artificial condition of the brain when people are in the process of pair bonding. I want to know more about it. I want to study it more deeply. But what I think God is doing is kind of softening the brain so that people can bond more effectively. And I have also read research to the effect of that early falling in love experience actually creates kind of a neurological environment where people can develop a sense of security and connection to that person over the long term. So one thing ministers to another. These are just stages of relational development. But I'm really excited, to see these things on the one hand, but on the other, I realize that you cannot sustain that sort of artificial condition of the brain indefinitely. So what happens is the brain goes back to normal after a couple of years. And the initial flush of romantic feelings kind of dissipates somewhat. So the question I want to put on the table now is, do we lose all romantic feelings? Well, it turns out you don't. But this is how it works. You guys know about hybrid cars. We were driving a hybrid over here. It was really weird because if you're like me, you're used to the car like sounding like it's on, and then you hit the gas and you go. But if it doesn't sound like it's on, you hit the gas and it doesn't go. But this one, you hit the gas and it does. But you understand what I mean. Like, hybrid cars are very fascinating because what they do is they actually store the energy, like if you're going down a hill, in a battery, and then eventually you stop using the gas and you use the stored energy. In other words, you change the power supply in the car. That's why they're hybrid, or that's one of the characteristics of a hybrid vehicle. Well, it's kind of what happens with love. You change the power supply somewhat, but the power is still there for not just commitment and steadfast love for that person, appreciation of their character, and all the other things that you experience in a good marriage, but also the romantic feelings. They do not have to disappear. So here's the point. The feelings that led to commitment now follow commitment. Love once stirred expression. Now expression stirs love. So feelings lead, commitment follows. You have all this neurological stuff going on. Eventually, that's going to transition into a more normal neurological state, but then the commitment will lead and the feelings will follow. Let's look at this in an inspired statement.
You want me to read that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Though difficulties, perplexities, and discouragements may arise, let neither husband nor wife harbor the thought that their union is a mistake or a disappointment. Determined to be all that it is possible to be to each other. Continue the early attentions. In every way, encourage each other in fighting the battles of life. Study to advance the happiness of each other. Let there be mutual love, mutual forbearance. Then marriage, instead of being the end of love, will be, as it were, the very beginning of love. The warmth of true friendship, the love that binds heart to heart, is a foretaste of the joys of heaven.
Love it. You should narrate, David. That was good. So I love that statement, continue the early attentions. One of the things we do, just to illustrate this, with people with insomnia, the cognitive behavioral treatment for insomnia is you're in bed from midnight till 7 in the morning. If you are tossing and turning, you get out of bed and you sit in a chair. And you don't do anything in that chair. If you start feeling sleepy, you get back in bed. What they're trying to do is develop an association between bed and sleep. and your brain has to wire that in. Neurons that fire together, wire together. And so what she's saying here is there was a time when you gave a lot of attention to someone because your brain was on, all these chemicals. When you actually engage in those same behaviors toward that person, it will re-summon those chemicals. Do you see that? So that's why she's saying continue the early attentions. If you brought flowers, bring flowers.
Yeah, let me just speak to that. We were talking, it just occurred to me, we were talking about the surprise trip that I planned for Violetta. And one of the things that I did when I was courting Violetta, I think a lot of us probably did something like this. I wrote her cards, right? So would write these cards and I would decorate them and put little drawings because I can kind of draw a little bit.
So romantic.
Yeah, it was really nice. And she keeps those cards still, all of those cards that I gave her in the sort of courtship phase and engagement phase. She has all of them. And so one of the things that I had decided to do in preparation for this trip that I was planning, first it was so exciting to do it actually, because first it was just an idea. I kind of floated it by Jennifer. I floated it by my son. Like, could I actually pull this off? Then I had to put together a budget and then an idea. Where are we going to go? And in the planning, I started to get giddy. I was just getting so excited.
Beautiful.
But it was actually kind of tricky because Violetta and I, we love doing life together. We do a lot of traveling together and backpacking together. We are friends. We're not just lovers. And most of the time, we will plan those things together. And there's joy in making plans together. Like, should we, looking at the Airbnb app, should we stay here or here? Should we spend 2 nights here or 2? When we plan our trips. Or if it's a backpacking trip, where should we go? What should we do? Should we stay a night at this lake or this lake? But this was different because I was planning the whole thing. And it was really fun to enter into the world of imagining what Violetta would say. What would she want? And of splurging even, like just going over the top. I mean, purposefully really kind of making the best possible trip that I could conceive of.
Beautiful.
And what I found was that in the planning, especially when I was actually doing the planning, it created this tremendous love for her. I already loved her, but I was getting so excited about it.
That's right.
And then the thing that really came to my mind was, you need to write her those cards again. So I went and bought the same kind of markers that I wrote the original cards with, and I made 5 cards.
All these men are gonna get mad at you for raising
No, that's
the bar.
fine, but
raising the bar so high.
It just kept kind of piling up. And so what I ended up doing is I purchased 5 cards and I hand decorated them all.
The women are all going, oh.
And then I had one was 1 out of 5, and then the next card would say 2 out of 5, and I would decorate them all with 25 years. And as I was doing this, the point is, to this point, as I was doing these things, writing the cards, and they had to be perfect. In fact, I actually only ordered 5 cards, which was a mistake, because I messed up one of the cards I hadn't written. I'd written the whole thing out, but I wasn't happy with it. It didn't capture. Because what I did, just a little bit more. What I did was I came up with 5 things that I loved about Violetta, and each card contained one of those things. And so I wanted it to really capture this thing. As a mother, I love you. As a lover, I love you. As a friend. So all of them I wrote out. But I was unhappy with one of the cards, so I had to reorder another one and rewrite the whole thing because I wanted it to be perfect. And when I was doing this, it just elicited all of those same feelings. It's exactly what Jennifer's describing here. I went through the motions, and in going through the motions, it created the emotions. Right? I went through the motions and it created the emotions. Where early on I didn't have to...
That's a T-shirt right there.
That's a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Early on I didn't have to do that. It was just natural. I was in love with her. She was hot. I couldn't wait to see her naked. Right? Like, I was completely motivated in the way that all, young men are motivated. But then now, 25 years later, you still love her and there's still that... But doing those things it reignited the sort of, and then our trip was amazing.
And
it was like a honeymoon almost. Yeah.
Praise the Lord. So I think people make a mistake when they want everything to come, quote, from the heart.
Right.
If I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to say, well, it doesn't really totally work that way, does it? If you're committed to that person, and unless there's been some egregious wrong in the relationship, you can love them through a lot of faults and flaws and mistakes. There's too much rushing. I know we're kind of lifting the ban on divorce in the church these days, and I know some of you have been through that. I'm not judging anyone. That's not my intention, and that's between you and God, and I think there are times. But on the other hand, people kind of rush to it these days as a solution. when they could very well overlook or minimize or put in perspective some of those things and continue to love that person and remember those early attentions and express those things and build their love, build a positive vibes in their relationship, don't you think?
Yeah, totally.
More people could do that. And so people end up in a negative feedback loop where, like, unless I feel it, I'm not going to say it. You don't say it, and because you don't say it, you don't feel it. What did you say? You
go through
action,
the motions, and then the emotions follow.
That's great. We said it's a T-shirt because we're going to do a series of T-shirts with little slogans on it, then create some interest for try this at home. So, committed loves, not a mistake. This is just a boil down. Determine all you can be to each other, continue those early attentions, encourage each other, and study to advance the happiness of each other, which you can see that David did off the charts in that wonderful honeymoon that he planned. And then love and forbear. Beautiful, beautiful statement. These are some of the lies the enemy tells us in our marriages. You're not soulmates. This is how, I don't know if you guys know the history of the church, E.J. Wagner, A.T. Jones. E.J. Wagner fell into the soulmate heresy where he came to the conclusion that he and his wife were not soulmates, that he was soulmates with this friend of his. And of course, he ended up committing adultery with her. It breaks up marriages. It's ridiculous and unrealistic. You don't really love each other. What does that mean? You don't love each other? Love is a choice. This is a nuanced issue. Or your marriage was a mistake. That's not something you want to say to yourself. Even if the conditions that led to your marriage were not ideal, don't tell yourself it was a mistake. That's a fatal kind of action. This is just illustrating the reality of the intensity of romantic feelings at the beginning of a marriage. There is this sort of fable that a couple in the first year of marriage is supposed to put a jelly bean in a jar for every time they have sex, and then they take a jelly bean out of the jar after the first year of marriage for every time they have sex, and they never exhaust the supply of jelly beans. Or you can do it with real beans, and they say after 20 years you make bean soup, because there's still beans left, you see. Saying that you're so sexually motivated in that first year of marriage that you're just, hot for each other, and then it dissipates after that. But it's true. There is a die-off, not just from the original condition of the brain in love, but also because people age, and as we age, our hormones dissipate or taper off. So it's a fact that you're not going to be as hot forever. All right, so here I want to say, David, I can't believe you didn't comment on that one. Did you guys try the jelly bean?
Did you put the tri-weekly thing up there?
That's in a different one.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. You like that one a lot. Okay, so this is an important point, and that is that a biblical approach doesn't rule out attraction, but it expands the basis of it. So you love that person not just because they're hot, but that it's okay to feel like they're hot and to be strongly physically attracted, particularly in the early stages. But you also have a larger appreciation of the person on a characterological level, spiritual level, emotional level, relational level. That's also part of biblical, quote, falling in love. Right. So let's not leave those things out. We're going to really develop that in our dating work. There's 3 basic systems of romantic bonding, you might say. One would be lust with the hormones and the pleasure. Another would be romance with the dopamine. That's the neurochemical that facilitates romantic attraction, and that would have attraction as well. And then attachment, which would be mediated by oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and security. So all of these systems are working together in a married relationship. And you're going to move kind of from one system to another. There's going to be more of that sexual intensity at the beginning, but you're going to move into more of a general appreciation of the person. But that's still part of being in love. So you move, some behavioral scientists say, from passionate to compassionate love. Makes me think of Carly Simon's song, "It's the stuff that dreams are made of. It's the slow and steady fire. It's your heart and soul's desire." Beautiful song from a totally secular place, but it's true. The relationship that so many of these people that have been through multiple divorces, she was once married to James Taylor, the relationship these people desire is that stable, solid relationship. So if you have something like that, thank God. All right, I want to give you just a few tools for recapturing the romance in your relationship. Let's look for a brief moment here at the life timeline. What God has done in the family is he has created a process whereby we build on relational skills with every phase of human life. So we begin with that relationship, usually first and foremost with mom, who can nourish us from her very own body. And we have that bonding experience with a mother who regulates the emotions and builds neurological frameworks for emotional regulation in her children and for bonding. Then about 3 years old, as I mentioned a moment ago, the father becomes more active in the relationship, depending on the marriage and the man and so forth. But the child becomes ambulatory and verbal, and the father typically starts to interact more with the child. They go fishing, they go playing ball or whatever. And then after the parent relationship, we start typically to relate to siblings. That's a more horizontal relationship. It involves more negotiation, more competition, more conflict management. That sibling relationship prepares us for the first relationship outside of the family structure, and that's friendship. And that friendship is very similar to a sibling relationship. Lots of negotiation, some competition, some conflict management, and so forth. If you get good at that kind of relationship, then I think you're ready for a spouse. You're ready to find a life partner, because a life partner is basically a very, very good friend, and you could say a friend with benefits. And then you go on to have children of your own, typically, and then sometimes grandchildren, although I'm not there yet. Song of Solomon, we can see this reflection of the sort of confluence of friendship and a romantic relationship in this, where the bridegroom talks to the bride and says, "This is my beloved." Oh, I think it's the bride talking to the bridegroom. "This is my beloved, and this is my friend." So, we have a friend, and we're going to talk about this in our dating workshop, but we have a friend, Nathan Renner. There's this thing in young people, like, don't get friend zoned if you're interested in someone romantically. Have you heard this? I don't agree with that. And I don't agree with it for many reasons, one of which is Nathan. He was very interested in Becky, and everyone was interested in Becky because she was absolutely beautiful, still is, and everybody had a crush on Becky. Well, Nathan was the only one with the guts to walk right up and say, "Hey, you interested? Let's think about dating." And he did, and she said, "No, I'm not interested." And he said, and he's totally unflappable. I mean, that's totally. He said, "Okay, well, let's just be
I was
friends."
actually his roommate at the time. When he went and expressed interest in Becky, and as Jennifer said, everybody thought Becky was the bee's knees. She was just so pretty. But Nathan was, just audacious enough to try, to shoot his shot. And she rebuffed him, but in a sweet way, because she's a Wisconsin girl, super sweet. And when Nathan came back and she had not, responded or expressed similar interest in him, he said to me, this was like on the day of, which he's just such a wise person, and he is an old soul, he's, an old head on young shoulders, even back then. And he said, no, I said, I can see this situation. He said, she's a good-looking girl. Every guy that's ever been a friend of hers has expressed interest in her. She's because she'd just become a follower of Jesus like a year before. He's like, no problem. She just wants to be friends. He's like, I'm just going to be her friend. And he said, I think it's going to work out. I think I'm going to win her over. So he was totally content to just go right back to friend zone.
What did you think in that moment?
I thought this guy has incredible confidence. I also thought that it was unlikely because, Nathan's kind of goofy. He's kind of funny.
You didn't tell him, though.
No, I was impressed. I was so impressed with his...
But you didn't say, "I don't think you stand a chance."
No, I didn't, because his confidence was
incredible.
Off the charts. So what happened is that he just became a really great friend. He was cool. He wasn't weird. He wasn't awkward. He didn't get... And then over time, not very much time, in fact, like say 7-8 months, she started to slowly fall for him. And then eventually when they got together, he was like, she fell into my trap. I knew it. I knew this would work. So he had the wisdom to see that the friendship stage was exactly what she needed, because she was so beautiful. She'd been a party girl. She'd been pursued, that he just backed off. And then eventually she saw some solidity and stability in him that attracted her to him, not just on that sort of superficial level.
And they're still best friends to this day. And
they have a great marriage,
yes,
like an A+ marriage.
Yeah, wonderful marriage. And thank God for that friendship, because that friendship is what we can always go back to, even when you lose kind of the romantic buzz in your relationship, you can recover the friendship. So here's some action steps for recovering the friendship. Number 1, take a step back, get perspective. If things aren't working out, just zoom out, and look at your relationship from a distance and gather to yourself the positives, because when you get real up close to something and you're struggling, you're likely to become overwhelmed with the negatives. You know what I'm saying? So zoom back, get some perspective, recapture the goodwill, even if you never sleep with this person again. And I'm talking somewhat here to troubled marriages. Even if you never hug the person again, think of something redemptive about your relationship with them and about them as individuals. Recapture that goodwill. You want good for them. You care about them as a person. Amen. You don't want to destroy them. Take that step back and recapture that and take perspective. And, oh, wait a minute, I'm skipping something here. Maybe it's in the next one. So we're going to unpack that more, because we're going to talk about curiosity in the next session and how to ask open-ended questions. But let's do a quiz here, and then we'll take a short break. Okay. We build in this order: commitment, security, trust, and what? Good. The pair bonding process can lead to a reduction in the neurotransmitter serotonin. Very good. Never cherish the thought that your marriage was okay. The 3 systems of pair bonding are lust, romance, and what? Attachment. That's right. Good. You guys are sharp this morning. In a typical courtship, love stirs expression. In a healthy marriage, expression stirs love. There you go. We move from passionate love to boring coexistence, dispassionate love, or compassionate love. See, very good. All right. I want you, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of an action step here. I have 3 worksheets in your book, and if somebody could look this up and tell me what page number it is, that would be helpful. What we're going to do now is some
page 43.
Some exercises that recapture the goodwill. Page 43. We want to work a little bit on recapturing that goodwill. I remember going to a marriage counselor with my husband once, and they asked a series of questions very similar to this, and it was so helpful just to get some perspective, just to recover what was good about our relationship. And that's what we're doing here. So we call it the history of love worksheet, the present of our love worksheet, and the future of our love worksheet. It's a lot. I want you to just do the first page if you can do it, and do as many of those as you can do in, let's say, till 11:15, and then come back, and I'm going to want you to share, a few of you that are willing to share what you came up with, okay? 15 minutes.
And that's on page 43, I think.
And that's on page 43, yeah.
Okay, 15 minutes.
All right, so how you guys doing? Did you work on your sheets? Okay, who would like to share what they came up with? Okay, go ahead. Let's grab a microphone. Here we go. I'll pass this back to you. And tell me your name. Oh, I don't think I've met you yet. What's your name?
Lauren.
Lauren. Hi, Lauren. Hi. And your wife is?
Carrie.
Hi, Carrie. Carrie and Lauren.
I just want to address the first 2 briefly.
Okay.
What were the top positive things, and I'm just going to address one, that you liked about your partner when you met? At Pacific Union College it would have to be 72, I suppose. Maybe, no, what would it be? About 77. Yeah, not 72. 77. I had seen Carrie, and I decided that I would determine where she would be at a certain time so I could accidentally, bump into her. And so I knew she was going from this class to this place at a certain time, and I conveniently positioned myself. The thing that I like, I'll tell you at first, before I tell you what happened, was her forthrightness. And it was shocking to me, because as I met her, you're Carrie, aren't you? And she says she doesn't remember saying this, but she said, you know who I am. Just like that. And the person who tipped her off that I was going to do this is sitting at the end of this row.
Steve?
You told Kathy. Kathy told her. Kathy's her sister. But that forthrightness, it threw me off guard. It threw me off guard, but I didn't. And at first, at that very moment, I thought, I'm not following through with this because I was going to ask her out. And something that surprised me was that I shoved that aside and asked her out. And we happened to go on a double date.
The courage, the confidence.
It took a lot.
I know.
It took a lot, but
you pushed through.
yeah,
I'm proud of you.
You know who I am.
And you don't remember saying this?
No.
No,
Memory's a funny thing.
And then what is the positive thing that led you to deciding to form a relationship? I could see very quickly that Carrie was, she was confident. And when I say that, I mean her feet were firmly planted on a relationship with God. And it was not going to move at all. And that was just one thing that gave her confidence. It doesn't matter what anybody said about anything about her if it was negative at school. And there were some things. She was just confident in her relationship with God. And she still is. And I appreciate that so much.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So much.
Love it. And that summons up those feelings to even recount that. All right, that's...
Appreciated thinking about that in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah. It's powerful, isn't it? All right, go ahead.
I'll comment on the same two. And I want to just briefly
Greg?
describe how we met.
Bruce.
Bruce.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm Bruce. Shawnee and I were both members of the Sacramento Cactus and Succulent Society.
Cactus and Cycling
Yes,
Society?
and everybody says that when we mention
succulent.
this.
I was like,
And
cycling, cactus.
they
What's
had
the
gone
relationship?
to Zoom meetings during the pandemic. And we hadn't met at the in-person meetings. But they had a couple of Zoom meetings. I didn't like Zoom. I had to do a lot of meetings on Zoom. I was tired of it.
Yeah.
So the one time,
Except
in
you're
the
going to
summer
come to
of
the one with us. That's
21,
all.
I think.
You know.
I'm sorry.
You're going to come to the one with us because we have great Zoom meetings. So just saying.
I think it was the summer 21.
Yeah.
I did log into the Zoom meeting, and so did she. One and only
One I went to.
the only one that she did. And the speaker couldn't log on. They were having technical difficulties, and we're all sitting there staring at each other. You know, there's 20 people on the screen. And she popped up and she said, "Let me show you my gardens." And so she came on the screen full size when she started talking. And I went, "Who is that?" Instantly, I had this instant reaction. And so she started talking about her gardens, and she walked around with a computer, and she showed us all of her cactus, and she started talking about it, and she said, "You know, I have an Instagram account, and I have hundreds and hundreds of pictures of my cactus, so if anybody is interested, this is my Instagram account." And I grabbed a
This is
pencil.
really...
I grabbed a pencil and I wrote it down as fast as I
You
could.
definitely want that Instagram account, but not for the cactuses.
And I sent a follow request to her, and I thought, she's going to think I'm a stalker. She doesn't know who I am. She won't remember me from the meeting. But she accepted.
But I did.
So she accepted my follow request. I started looking at all, and she has not only pictures of her cactus, but of her family and all of her history going back. It's her whole life story,
5,000 pictures.
which I studied very carefully over the period of a few weeks. And I was really reluctant. I was really reluctant to contact her, but finally she had commented on a couple of my pictures, and so, okay, I'm going to comment on her pictures. So we started doing that. And then before you know it, we were messaging each other.
I said, listen, this is my phone number. Where are we?
So then we moved to text messages, and
Girl.
then she said,
Girl.
"No, there was just a meeting at the Cactus Club that I went to, and I volunteered to do the newsletter. Do you know anything about newsletters?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm a graphic designer. I could probably help you with that."
Did you just become a graphic designer in that instant?
Well, not really, but I was more of a photographer, but I do have a background in it. So I thought that was an interesting coincidence. So she said, "Well, you know, we're probably going to have to meet if you're going to help me." And I said, "Okay, where do you want to meet?" So we met at the Ruth Bancroft Gardens in Walnut Creek. It's a beautiful cactus and succulent garden there. And it very quickly became obvious that it was a date and it wasn't a meeting. And so that's how we met. And
How did it become obvious? How did it become obvious? Yeah. Like, what do you mean by that?
she saw me and she hugged me, like instantly. She gave me this big hug, and I thought, oh, I wasn't expecting that, but I didn't complain about it either. So, I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I thought, this is going to be interesting. This is going to go well. So I answered the first question. The first thing I wrote was, I noticed right away that she's very interesting and intriguing, that she was into gardening. She had 8 kids. She's very fit. She's very active. I mean, I could have listed 10 things from the very first time we met that were just incredible to me. And then the second one, as we got to know each other a little bit better, I decided that I wanted a relationship with her because I felt like she really needed somebody to love her. She needed to be loved. There was a need there that I perceived. And, she needed someone to take care of her, and I was more than happy to do that. So that was... I don't want to take up too much time.
That's so beautiful. Oh, these are great.
That is the best. So teenagey. Yeah. Right?
But you never get over that. You never get over that, like little pitter-patter pit. It's so cool. But age is just... She slid into the DMs, that's right.
It's a very modern relationship.
Age is just a number. It's just a number. Oh.
I love that. That is so good.
Okay, I'm going to call on Alma because she told me her story this morning and it was so good. So, yeah. Here you go. This is...
Okay. Oh, gosh, it's a long story.
Your name?
My name is Alma. This is Michael, my husband of 7 years now, happily married. So Michael is my second husband. I have a long story of trauma and married a very old man when I was really young, very abusive. And so when we divorced, I thought I couldn't fathom getting married. I didn't believe in true love. I come from divorced parents. So I had a lot of baggage there, but the Lord healed me through many years of that, through a lot of therapy and a lot of prayer and beautiful people that showed me God's love. So when I met Michael, he came to my church that I had been a part of for many, many years. I had built a beautiful, healthy church community. And I had just surrendered to the Lord literally soon before to send me a husband. At that point, God had changed my heart and to say, you're safe now. I have someone for you. And so he asked me to just surrender it to him. And I was just telling Joy this. And I surrendered it to the Lord, and I said, Lord, I know you're going to make me wait because you always make me wait for everything. So if I have to be single until I'm 50, okay, fine. I was genuinely okay with that. But soon after he came to church, and actually some friends had said to me before he came to our church, they're they called me sis. They're like, you don't know, your husband is probably already in the area. He just hasn't made it to church yet. And sure enough, when I met him, he had been in the area for a year and hadn't made it to the church yet. So to make a very long story short, I was still kind of, guarded because of my past experiences, and especially with Adventist Christian men. And I was also used to dating much older guys. But when we met, he gave me this flirty look, and I immediately was like, no. No way, you're not even my type, don't even think about it, kind of thing. But he was very persistent, and when I told him, you're too young for me, he's like, you mean I'm age appropriate for you? And that just literally made me more attracted to him, because I'm Latina, I'm hot-headed, and have my own flaws, but the fact that he
kind of challenged you.
He was don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing. So as I got to know him, the top things that I loved about him when I first met him was his genuineness, his open-mindedness, his down-to-earth personality. And then what led me to form a relationship with him was that, his assertiveness, sense of humor, his attentiveness, and his faith. And then what led me to want to marry him was, his heart after God's own heart. And gave me a renewed sense of hope in true love and genuine love and sincere love, something I thought I would never, ever have. So he's my biggest blessing here on earth.
Well, and I praise God for this. I had a conversation with Alma this morning at breakfast, and she has a trauma history, and it's a religiously related trauma history, and she explained a little bit, and it's legitimate. But she's on a path of working through that, and I noticed something about her that is a good sign when people have a trauma history, and that is that she was positively connecting to people that were like mentor type relationships. Because when people have kind of a shattered home of origin, they don't get the formatting for knowing how to build relationships that get built into people that are from more functional homes. You don't realize how much is just installed in you when you have a loving mother and father. Well, she didn't have that. And so she didn't come into adulthood with those things already installed, but she was forming them now with adults and people that were like mentor figures. So that was encouraging. But the $1 million question for me, after she told me she'd been married before and now she's remarried, is, how's that marriage going? And she said, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And I was just like, yes, because that's a sign that she is working through the trauma and that she's moving forward in a better direction. And you're going to break a generational curse, girl. It's ending with you. It ends with you, and you're going on to something better.
Yes.
So I was very encouraged by that. Amen?
Amen. Praise
yes. God. Oh, you need to, Pastor, if you could just bring up my next presentation, that would be great. All right. How you guys doing? Does anybody else want to share?
That was awesome. All of those were so encouraging.
You want to go ahead? Okay, pass the mic back to him while we're getting the next booted up. Next presentation. These are awesome stories. And your name?
My name is David.
David, and your wife?
Her name is Olga.
Olga?
Olga.
Olga. Got it.
And she's not Russian.
She's what?
She's not Russian.
Okay. What are you? It's a name, right? Okay.
Right. So several of the things that I looked at
Is
when
that a Latino name?
the positive things that I saw in Olga when I first met her is that she was very, very friendly. She was genuine, and she exuded joy.
Beautiful.
She's got a beautiful smile and a real big heart.
She gave you a big hug?
No, she has a big
She's
heart.
a big heart. I was going to say, these hugs, these women hugging, this is interesting. Go ahead.
And what are the 3 positive things about your partner that led you to decide to form a relationship? Is we like the same type of music. I enjoyed her company and couldn't wait to see her. She had that friendly way of connecting and engaging in conversation, and I would just be mesmerized and love to listen to her. And the other thing is that we were both Christian. And even though, there's flaws, but that's one solid thing that I'm very grateful for.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Are you done, or are we going to keep going?
I was going to just keep going.
Yeah, go ahead.
I enjoyed meals together with her, mutual interests, and love to go places together, going on small trips, whether it was a park or whether it was to the mountains. It was nice. And what are 3 things about my partner and our relationship that led me to want to get married? She was a Christian, of course. I enjoyed time with my wife, and she was a real good friend to me. She was wise, and also she was loving and nurturing. So those are the things that I felt that I didn't really have in my home. So, yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you for that so much. You know, sometimes we marry someone who is like our mother, and sometimes we marry someone who is not like our mother because there were some deficits there, and you move on to something else. Go
You
ahead.
used a word there, David, that I loved, and it was completely consonant with your presentation, Jen. Mesmerized. You said I
Yeah.
was mesmerized. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happens,
That's
you know, when you fall.
neurological
I mean,
stuff.
Bruce, I was detecting some mesmerization
Mesmerization.
there. So this is what happens, you know, the brain. And I never thought of that before, Jennifer, but I love this idea that God has caused this sort of cascade and this particular cocktail of neurotransmitters to soften your sort of critical reasoning faculties to sort
like
of bond.
Breaking up the fallow ground of the brain so
But
that
this
the
also,
seed can
this
go.
also shows, though, why it's so crucial that we surround ourselves when we're in, you know, not in this phase, but in the dating phase, with people that are good counselors that know us well. That because
Yeah.
we're inebriated with love, right? We're a
Yeah.
little drunk on love.
A little high.
So having people around you that can see with greater clarity is
because
important.
that can work for you because it can like soften the brain, like
Correct.
we're saying, in a way that makes you more sort of impressionable.
Right,
and you
exactly.
can take on the impression of the other person in a way that bonds you, but it can also work against you, where you're completely missing cues that you would normally
Correct.
see. And so you
Correct.
need people to talk into that for you.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
help
you nailed
steer
it.
you. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you,
All right.
David. That was awesome.